Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Whatever time of day it is and whatever day it is, I want to thank you for listening to another episode of AJH Politics. I'm Aric Hermann and I'm running for Shawnee County Commission District 1. Go ahead and like and share this video as it helps the channel, which helps my campaign, which helps end the corruption of the duopoly. Today is May 14th, 2026, and this is episode 7 of this year. And in this episode, I will be discussing the Shawnee County Commission meeting on May 14th, 2026. And I also want to acknowledge that this is basically how my campaign is running. So if you are a potential voter watching this, I know these videos can be dry and boring. It's not exactly great YouTube comment, but you do elect someone to deal with having to go to these meetings so that way you don't have to. Ideally, I'm voting the right way. So I'll just kind of be covering the meeting and how I would vote and why I would vote that way. And that's what you can expect. So before I get started on that, I did want to let you know also that I did make a video about the Shawnee County meeting on May 11th, which was just as short. Not much really happened during that meeting. There was a report from Parks and Rec about some survey data that they had collected, and there was some public comment about homelessness. So let me know also, comment if you can, because that helps. But I do some videos where I'm just talking. I do other videos where at least I have the visual of my dog. I'm not trying to trap anyone with the dog videos. I just figure it's a better visual than what you're seeing right now. The last little bit of housekeeping is on a previous episode. They talked about redoing the sidewalk near the ADA stalls at the county commission office. So here's a picture of that. Obviously, work has already started, so I don't know how bad it was before that. I did have a chance to type out a script, so I ideally have a good idea of what to say, and that will hopefully reduce any of the awkward pauses and ums that plague any public speaker. So this meeting started off with a simple vote of 3-0 to consent to the agenda. The second order of business was to approve $3.4 million in vouchers, which, as I understand, is basically the county paying its bills. This is money coming out. These are not vouchers about money that's coming in. There was a breakdown of this $3.4 million, and the biggest chunk was $1 million of it is basically payroll to employees. And you cannot cut taxes without cutting spending, which cuts services, which means you have to cut employees. That's the most important way of thinking about the government. It's all together. You can't just cut taxes. So I really just want to bring up this $1 million of the vouchers is basically just to show that that's almost a third of the money that went out is just to pay people to have jobs that you would just think that if their job was as valuable as their salary is, and I'm not saying it isn't, they very well could absolutely deserve the money that they get paid for the service that they provide. I just don't understand why doesn't the private sector in general take care of these things and just we have businesses that hire the same employees to do the exact same job instead of having the government do so much stuff. And I just want to just bring it out because I'm not here to take necessarily a sledgehammer or a chainsaw to government spending. But maybe a death by 1,000 slices. I just really want to be prudent with how the money is going out. And you'll see that as we cover this episode, which is kind of a doozy. But they also talked about all the health insurance that they have to pay this month. That was a totally different slice of those vouchers. And although it wasn't cited this time, you still have to think about things like retirement funds and pension plans and all that sort of stuff. So it just got to throw out the numbers there for it. Anyway, it was voting to accept the vouchers. It did pass 3-0, and I would also too vote in the affirmative on that, despite what I was just saying. Like I said, that's because this is contracted money. We've already hired these people and promised them this money. We have to fulfill that contract. That's how business gets done. It's kind of like they're voting about approving, yeah, somebody else did this, and now I'm just here kind of rubber stamping it, so to speak. You got to pick your battles with this stuff. So let's move on. So to the next item was on the correction orders, which they never really even talk about. They voted on it and it passed 3-0, which I would agree to also. Just like I did with the vouchers, despite how much I dislike the government. But let's move on. Next up was the Department of Directions, which had two agenda items. First was spending $57,000 for a vehicle that involves transferring for the juvenile detention center people. Basically, he was saying that this was kind of already approved in an earlier session, but then the company that basically retrofits these school buses to add, prison bars to it got delayed, but now they're ready to build this bus for them. And so now he has to kind of ask for the money again. It was approved 3-0. I would agree and also approve of this based mostly off of the idea that it sounds to me like it was kind of already approved and we're just kind of like the money had already been allocated, I want to say, from the SIP fund. I may have written that down incorrectly. I don't know. Anyway, we'll move on to the second item from the Department of Corrections. It was to hire 2 peer substance abuse counselors for the prison at a cost of $92,000. Now, I don't know if that's total cost or if that's per hire, and it's twice that value. They didn't specify that. They did say that this money is coming from Kansas, who got this money from the federal government. In other words, this costs the county $0, which is kind of my most important issue. Is I really want to focus on how the county money is getting spent. It did pass 3-0, and I too would have also voted in the affirmative. And like I said, you kind of got to pick your battles because taxation is theft, right? So even though this isn't Shawnee County money, this is money that was maybe in Sedgwick County, or it came from the federal government. It could have been money from somebody in New York. And it just seems a little silly that we would want to be stealing that money from people in New York to go help Shawnee County. They should be helping it for themselves. But like I said, you kind of got to pick your battles. I do believe that the prison system is really messed up. And this idea of we really need to be rehabbing people through the concept of a carrot rather than the concept of a stick. And, it is what it is. I think substance abuse counseling could really help with the rehab. I acknowledge that taxation is theft, but you got to kind of pick and choose what you can go for. The next item was from the health department. It was to hire a woman and children's team leader for $103,000, and this person is experienced as a dietitian and supervisor. This is funded by, I think they call it the WIC fund, WIC, which I guess is something about the Women's and Children Fund. I have already kind of opined my confusion about the usefulness of this county health department. I don't know what this health department is doing that's helping me. Like, I understand Parks and Rec has parks and recreational activities that I'm very conscious of, at least, even if I don't actively participate in every park or every activity, or how they salt roads. And even though I don't drive on that road, I get it. But we've got this health department thing, and they want to basically fund someone to be a dietitian, which, with all due respect, if you don't know how to diet, let me just suggest this. Stop eating so much and you'll lose weight. Try laying off the Oreos and eating some vegetables. If you want to do research about how to be a vegan or a carnivore or the Mediterranean diet or the keto diet, you go right ahead. Go ahead and talk to a doctor. Talk to the dietitian at your gym. The trained personal trainers, certified personal trainers. There's a lot of ways of learning how to have a diet, and spending $103,000 for someone to have that role for the entire county. I don't know if this person is calling you up and reminding you, not to put down that extra slice of cheese or whatever, but I don't know what they're doing. Also, supervisor. That basically tells me that there's an entire team of people that are apparently in charge of the county's diet, and not a big fan of that. And if they were doing something amazing, they mentioned in this that this is the role that they have been trying to fill for a very long time, and finding these dietitians are hard. In terms of supply and demand in the workforce, you want a job getting out of college, go become a dietitian, because apparently they're hiring. Great. That's awesome for them. I still just... I just don't see why you can't, learn that from some... Oh, what I was saying about the supervisor. Well, if there's a team already doing it, I guess they don't need supervision, right? Because they mentioned in it how long they've been looking for this role to get filled. So I would have voted no. It did pass 3-0. Yeah, it is what it is. I had a lot of also issues about it really being rather sexist and ageist to say that they won't help adult men with this money. Really have a hard problem with segregating services for people. That whole separate but equal thing, that should not be something that, you'd think that we would learn something about Brown v. Board in the city of Topeka, but apparently we still have to learn that lesson. Anyway, let's move on. So to the next item is from Public Works, seeking an RFQ for new concrete at the Adult Detention Center. This would be paid for by the roof and parking lot funds. Basically, there was no evidence that I could see, and I will try and talk about evidence. I don't know if there's something on the screen that they see and when you attend these meetings in person, or if it just doesn't get shown on YouTube. But I saw no evidence of can you just take a picture and show me the crappy concrete so that way I know it needs to be replaced? Anyway, at this concrete pad at the loading and unloading area, they need it to be professionally engineered. You can't just kind of have the contractor guys show up and do it. They talked about why that was. Anyway, it passed 3-0. No evidence was given about how bad it was. They never even talked about what the price of this RFQ is. Now, I understand if you don't know, an RFQ is basically a request for quote. It basically is like going to these engineering firms and saying, hey, can you do a little bit of work and tell us how much it would cost to do this thing? I don't know if these engineering firms just kind of we'll do, a free $50,000 of work for you with the idea that hopefully we land this $5 million contract, or even if we have to pay $1 for this RFQ. I don't know. I'd say basically no, not because even if they needed it. I'm just saying, if there was just a picture that would just be like, hey, this is how bad it is, just so you know when I say it's bad, rather than just kind of taking my word for it. And it's not that I want to not trust these people, this is basically the guru of Public Works, he's presenting, this is what my department needs to be doing. I have a lot of faith and trust that he's telling the truth. It's just, can we at least make it formal for my constituents? So that way when my constituents say, hey, why are you spending all this money and why are property taxes so high? I can be like, hey, let me show you some of the evidence. So anyway, I would have voted no on it. Just until evidence is made that this needs to happen, no, I'm not spending any money or trying to get plans in place to spend even more money later. Because that's basically what it is. It's basically, hey, you want another bill in the future? I don't know. Probably not. Who wants another bill in the future? We're not asking about having another bill. We need to be asking about the service. The second item from Public Works was to turn the intersection at Northwest 86th and Northwest Wilson from a two-way stop into a four-way stop. Why? Is because there was a complaint from the public. Public Works did consult with the Sheriff's Department about accident data, although none of that data was even shared. They didn't share the fact that there was a horrible, deadly intersection. They didn't share the fact that actually there's no real problem from it. There was no actual testimony from this citizen that complained about this intersection. I would like to know what that is. I literally would like to know what that is. Let's see here. We talked about that. Anyway, yeah, it's not that I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. It's just I keep on coming up with questions that just don't seem to really be getting answered or asked by the people on this board. They did also talk about, legally speaking, it is the county's decision about how this intersection works. And then it is the township, that is to say Soldier Township's responsibility to maintain that intersection. So it's kind of like, well, you'll see that when we talk about honeysuckle. When a higher form of government makes an order on a lower form of government. I don't really like this idea that the county can say, hey, you need to maintain a four-way stop, which they never talked about if it was going to be flashing red lights or if it was just going to be 4 stop signs. that is different maintenance responsibilities for that township that we as are making decisions for. So cost was never addressed. I would have had, more or less, I would have voted no on it until I get more data. I'm going to say, where are my notes here? Yeah, it passed 3-0. I would have voted no against it, not because I wouldn't have not voted yes in the next meeting. Like I said, I just need more data. You gotta really sell me on this idea of spending money and growing the government. Because if I can cut something that we don't need, if we really, if we need the four-way stop, let's get the four-way stop there. If we don't need it, then that is money that can be either spent elsewhere or returned to the citizens. That's what I'm looking at. I always look through every decision with that lens of the goal is for it not to be taxed. Moving on. Parks and Rec Department was talking about refurbishing the carousel in Gage Park, and now it's in phase 2. This has basically already been paid for through the Gage Park sales tax, and it does have a maximum bill of $1.8 million for this phase 2 thing. They've already done phase 1. It's kind of like they've already done this stuff. They're basically showing the plans and discussing about the budget. There was some discuss about like, hey, well, if we can spend the money, do we want to invest in a better roof that lasts longer, even though it's more expensive? And they talked about, we're just kind of showing you the plans right now. There's time to change the roof if we need to. Basically, it passed 3-0, and I would have also passed this one too. Again, I understand taxation and all that stuff. I would pass it based off the premise that it's money that's already kind of been dedicated to this project, so we're just trying to see it through at this point. And I will also acknowledge that they did have a packet for the commissioners that they were flipping through and looking at all sorts of stuff. Moving on to the next part was public comments, of which there were none. Moving on to the next part, of which it was admin communications. The county treasurer stood up and announced that there's a $14.9 million outstanding property taxes that are owed to the city for the second half of, I believe, 2025, and still $4.9 million outstanding taxes owed to the city from the first half of 2025. So that's almost $20 million that the citizens of Topeka can't afford. I mean, like, don't you just think you pay property taxes just so you don't have to deal with the notifications and worry about the foreclosures and all that sort of crap? If you could, if it was disposable income, at least, you know what I mean, just to not deal with the hassle of it. And there they have the county treasurer reminding people, hey, people, there's $20 million of pain going on in this city, and you're giving somebody a fucking six-figure job to tell people to eat less fucking Oreos and eat more vegetables. I mean, it pisses me off so much. And I do try to keep these rather PG-13. I don't think I use too much strong vulgarity. I know some of my other videos have. These are pretty tame, honestly. But sometimes, you just get upset. Let's get back to the script. I did have some questions about that weren't really covered. It was, how many properties are we talking about? Are those properties in a certain demographic area or geographic area, like as who is hardest hit? There was really no data about it. Just by the way, these are some numbers. The next thing that came up was the weed department. And basically, as this John was explaining, apparently there's a new law from Kansas that goes into effect this next Monday, which adds 5 plants to the noxious weeds list, which includes diffuse and spotted knapweed, cutleaf and common teasel, and honeysuckle. Now, this honeysuckle thing is a huge thing, and I'm just going to make that its own video. So I'm just going to try to stick to what happened at the meeting. So for 2026, the weeds department is basically just going to educate people about, hey, if we see these 5 plants and they're on your land, you're responsible for killing them. They're not going to be issuing any fines. John also mentioned that he will not be collecting any data about who has these invasive plants on their property and turning it over to the state or to even the county commission. He's not doing that. If there's a problem that they become aware of, they're going to talk to the landowner about it, is basically what they're doing, at least for 2026. They also mentioned, I believe, that the state is selling the poison at cost. And he did also mention $89 at one point. Now, I don't know what that $89 does, if it buys a gallon of this poison, if that's how much it costs to kill one plant, if that's how much it costs to kill one square yard or 1/2 acre, or kill 10 plants or 100 plants. I don't know. He did say, but this is a cost that's going to be coming to this county for years. It's going to take probably, I would estimate, well over a decade of us getting this invasive plant under control. It is everywhere. It is a very, very big environmental hazard. But we're going to save that for another discussion here. It was, like I said, just an acknowledgement of some of the responsibilities that the Shawnee County Commission has, according to the state, even though the state doesn't fund it, which is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the county making decisions about what the township of Soldier has to pay for. They have to maintain it. It's their responsibility, even though we're making decisions for it. Anyway, let's move past honeysuckle. And next up was Tim Phelps from the Department of Corrections. He talked about a graduation ceremony this Saturday. Ashley from Parks and Rec was up next. She talked about splash pads opening up and the Topeka Symphony performing concerts at the Ted Inslee Gardens this summer, which I really want to go to. And then there was a reminder about the company picnic. And we're going to let that be that for this video. Thank you so much for staying into a lawn video. We're going to talk more about honeysuckle and some other things in future videos. So thanks for watching and vote for me. Bye.